Good morning. Good morning. So, by raise of hands, who here has used an outdoor faucet? This is not a trick question. This is, the outdoor spigot outside of your house? Okay, cool. Generally, everyone. If you don't know, don't be embarrassed. Google it. Talk to the person next to you. They raise their hand, so they're either lying or they know. So, outdoor faucets. These things are amazing. You can attach hoses, sprinklers, fill water balloons, wash sand off feet, emergency drinking fountain for toddlers, not that I would know. They're amazing. And there's an unlikely beauty to those little guys because they're not the source of the water. That is, the water doesn't begin with them. Instead, they are simply a conduit for that water to go from the inside and spread it to the outside. They're not in charge of where the water goes, where it nourishes, what it nourishes, how it's received or used. Their sole purpose, the water faucet's sole purpose, is to let the water out on the will and whim of the owner. We are the same way. To put it simply, we are water faucets. Because we're not the source of the water of life. In other words, we're not the source of life and sustenance. We are the conduit. We take what is inside the house of God and spread it to the outside. Similarly, we're not in charge of how God chooses to distribute that water, that love. Nor do we get to decide how it's used, how it's received, or who or what it nourishes, or how. Our sole purpose is to let what is on the inside pour out on the will and whim of our King, our cornerstone. Last week, I don't know if you were here. If not, no worries at all. Last week, we talked about recognizing Jesus as our cornerstone, and we figured out how to do that by assessing the various things in our lives and asking a dangerous question. Is God at the center of this? It all begins with submitting to Jesus, our King, and trusting that when we build on Him, that the things that matter in our lives, they finally will start to last beyond our abilities to control or pull through. So this theme of cornerstone continues in the second part of Matthew 22 that we're going to study today. And so I really want to double down on what it looks like to live out this submission to Jesus. So in broader strokes, how do we become who and what we're meant to be? Again, if He is the cornerstone, and cornerstone is a building term, then if we're building, what are we building today? We're going to unravel that. And as is true with pretty much all of God's kingdom, the answer is simple, not easy. So, who and what are we meant to be? To answer this, let's look at the story that we just read together, and then I'm going to make a few observations about it that will kind of be the foundation of our answer to that question. Who and what are we meant to be? So, Matthew 22, 34 through 40, if you'll read with me. But when the Pharisees heard that He had silenced the Sadducees with His reply, they met together again to question Him. One of them, an expert in religious law, tried to trap Him with this question. Teacher, which is the most important commandment in the law of Moses? Jesus replied, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. A second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. The entire law and the demands of the prophets are based on these two commandments. Okay. So Jesus just answered probably the most loaded question ever. What is the most important thing we should do to abide by God, to abide by God's laws? In our modern culture and age, we might phrase that same sort of loaded question like, what's the meaning of life? What's our purpose here? And Jesus' answer is incredibly profound. So for those of you who have grown up in the church, and for those of you who following Jesus is a new thing, let's not rush past this. It's easy to read this, be like, oh yeah, that makes sense, and then to just keep moving on. So let's not. Don't rush past this, because Jesus didn't give us a parable, or a mystic riddle, or he didn't even answer the question with a question. Again, all behaviors we've seen him do. So here, he gives us a clear, concise answer. Love God. Love him with everything you have, everything you got. Love him with your time, your money, your studies, your playtime, your attention, your love, your body, everything. Love him with everything. I remember reading this when I was a new Christian and, kind of stopping, pausing, being like, wow, yeah, love him with everything that I got. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. What's the most important thing that we can do with our lives? Love God? Okay, yeah, no huge logical leaps there. Where should we derive our meaning and purpose? Jesus? Okay. But he didn't stop there. Jesus kept going. He says, the second is equally important. So Jesus just put on equal footing the command to love God with everything that we are and do. And so what was that second command? Love others with the same intensity and care and attentiveness that you show yourself. Now, he did say that this one is second, so I want to be clear. There is a certain sequence to these, an order that we should do them. And yet, he makes it crystal clear that they are equally important. And how do we know this? Because he literally says, these are equally important.